good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 25th day of the third year of the New Earth Summit, India's first integrative summit on solutions to our problems in health, food, farming, and environment. I'm Sophie Sequeira from Earthkeepers Goa, your host for this evening, and I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and to our audience, also on behalf of our summit convener, Darryl D'Souza, and our 10 Earthkeeper groups in India and overseas. We express our gratitude to you for taking time out to be with us this evening and to share your insights and experience so that all watching this live webinar and its recording later may benefit from the holistic science and wisdom being presented on this platform that will help us all co-create a beautiful world. So our topic for today is repairing the damage done to the Earth's biosphere. I'll start with introducing our panelists for today. Our first panelist is Pritam Sinha, who is a fellow in engineering FIE, chartered engineer with a bachelor's in industrial electronics, and has around 24 plus years of rich experience in the information technology space and emerging technologies in one of the largest corporate entities in India. His green IT initiatives have been recognized with various coveted national and international awards, including prestigious recognition as Global Innovator of the Year. Pritam has been instrumental in nurturing social entrepreneurship, corporate social responsibilities, and leveraging expertise in IT to help NGOs and the social sector. He has done his MSc in yoga, is a student in MA Gandhi and Peace Studies, and has been selected as Fellow in Gandhian Philosophy, Public Health by National Institute of Naturopathy, Ministry of Ayush Goal recently. And in a fellowship program, he is working on multidisciplinary research on efficacy of nature cure dimensions of life for chronic health issues like diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular issues, and cancer. Our second panelist, Darryl D'Souza, who has been teaching people how to reverse chronic illnesses with integrated natural medicine since 16 years, after his own suffering of 14 years from chronic illnesses that almost ended his life in 2004 due to modern medicine failing him. His book, Become Healthy or Extinct, and lectures, videos, seminars, webinars, workshops, and residential retreats on wellness and spirituality are highly sought out. Darryl was the secretary of the World United Doctors and Healers Association for 5 years, during which he curated and convened their continued medico-spiritual education conferences. Darryl is also an industrial engineer, organic farmer, environmentalist, TEDx speaker, founder of Earthkeepers Connect, ambassador of Vegan Nation, convener of the New Earth Summit, and a speaker at the World Parliaments on Spirituality. For over 22 years, Darryl has been researching soil, animal, plant, and human biology, marine biology, planetary ecology, and holistic living, which has inspired him to do the New Earth Summit as a platform to showcase their integrated and symbiotic functioning. Our third panelist, Chandra Vikash Srivastava, who did his BTech from IIT Kharagpur and MBA from IIM Calcutta. He has worked with Tata Consultancy Services, Arvind Mills, and SAIL in the past, and is the founder of Indian Dynamics as well as 10 Systems and Services. Chandra Vikash is the convener of Gaia Earth Sansad, which stands for Global Assembly of Indigenous and Autonomous Community States. Its details are at gaiasansad.org. He is an indigenous researcher and activist who dedicated the last 12 years of his life for indigenous ecological, socio-economic, cultural, spiritual, and geopolitical causes, and is the chief mentor and innovation coach at Gaia Innovation Labs of the Global Academy for Indigenous Activism. Chandra Vikash has developed the LACE Gaia model, where LACE stands for Localized Abundance and Circular Economy, which he presented through several international and national research papers at the ITS World Congress 2004 in Japan, in 2009 in Sweden, at the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education in 2017 in Canada, and the Congress for New Urbanism, Australia in 2018. So for the first hour of this webinar, I have a few questions for our panelists, which will be followed by question and answers with our audience at 7 p.m., who may type in their questions in the Q&A box below, even before that time. If you would like to receive the recording of this webinar, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The New Earth Summit. So for our questions to the panelists, if I could start with Darryl, could you please start with explaining to our audience what is meant by biosphere? And then if you can go on to give one example of the damage done to it.
Thank you, Sophie, for the introduction. And coming to the word biosphere, yes. So bio is, of course, biology and something, we're talking of something living and a living sphere. So it is the living energy that is around the whole earth. Now, that is the air around us going right up to the sky, you know, the ozone layer, and even beyond that. So biosphere is a living entity, meaning it's comprised of the 5 elements. You see, most of the earth element we know is in the earth, but you have subtle components of earth element that are in the air also, which are, you know, the minerals that are there in their vaporized form. Now, and the salts. So biosphere will also include, of course, the sun rays, magnetic fields of the earth, energy fields of the human body, and all forms of energy that are around it. And not only the human body, of course, there's energy fields of the earth as well, of plants, of animals, surrounding the entire earth. Now, biosphere would also include anything that you take of the subtle elements and you put it upon the earth. You see, so anything you are adding to the soil and some kind of sprays, or even what is now being you know, understood as chemtrails that have been sprayed from aircraft. For whatever reason, we can get into it some other time. But even that is coming from the air, so it's moving through the entire biosphere. So our biosphere is contaminated with these things. So that is what we are talking about today in terms of biosphere. Now, one of the most prominent damages that is being talked about popularly nowadays is the electrical fields that are, you know, coming from especially the new 5G towers that are coming all across the globe. Now, going to the point when there was no G on this planet. So that's before the time of radio waves. And let's say, of course, before the time of satellites as well. At that time, the energy or the biosphere around the Earth, it was only containing the magnetic fields and other natural energies. So right from the time human beings started manufacturing radio waves, signals, you know, transmitting them across the surface of the Earth, from that time, a new energy that was never on the Earth, it was, you know, generated and emanated across the Earth. Now, obviously, that is going to create some disturbance in the entire biosphere of the Earth. And also it is going to affect the soil and the plants in whatever minor way. Now, as those energies started getting more advanced, as we call it, but from a point of natural materials, as it started getting more harsh. So we have seen certain effects, mainly concerned with human beings first, because what happens to us we know first. Then a little later we know what's happening to plants and animals. But before this time of this, I call it the time of Noji. And what were human beings experiencing in terms of what I call change in the environment, or a delta change or a change in shift. So where was the natural environment changing on this earth before any of these electronics or the radio waves came in, or 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G? Right before all of this, the change in the season was the change in the environment. So every time this the environment changed in a quickly, the human body also had to adapt to it in a quick way. And if the human body could not adapt to it in a quick way, it would show some symptoms. So this is something, not maybe I'm talking of it in a scientific way, but the experience every human being has had. And we know in many places, for example, like in India, after the summer season is over, then you have the rainy season. And if the rain suddenly come in 3 4 days, you begin to have a cough, cold, and what's called the flu gets you. And you will have joint pains, and it could be something very mild for some people, but it could be more for other people. And we have all known that it takes about 3 to 4 or 5 days. And our doctors also have told us over the years that antibiotics will not take away your seasonal flu, neither will antivirals. So you just rest at home and hydrate yourself, and don't exert too much, and the flu will leave you. So obviously when the antibiotics and the antivirals are not taking care of it, it is very clear it's not a flu that is generated from some organism, whether it's living like a bacteria, or whether it is dead material as the definition of viruses go, because even the antivirals were not working on them. So very clear that it is not some particle or some organism, dead or alive, but it is the change in the environment that forces the change on the human body. Now this is basic science, right? Uh, uh, so we have to respond, and it takes those 3 4 days to respond to this change and upgrade your DNA to match the, the field, because the field is going to be permanent for the whole monsoon, whether it's 3 or 4 months. So that's a normal change in the biosphere. That is a normal phenomena all across the globe, represented as the seasons. But as artificial permanent fields started coming across the earth and propagating through the entire radio system or the mobile system since 2G, 3G, 4G, and as the energy started getting harsher, the symptoms also started getting harsher. Then people started having 5 and 6 days cough, cold, flu, and all of that. And now it turns out that with as with the advent of 5G, with every increasing tower happening across the planet, there is a new field which we know from the scientific, frequencies of the sorry, the gigahertz frequencies, that it's a much harsher field. The towers are much more close by, whether it's 100 or 150 meters, because those high frequency waves don't go far. So you need to keep the towers close. So it's a very dense field. And what people are experiencing now is more than a 5 6 7 day flu. It is even going to 14 days, like in the case of my mother in Goa. Uh, and it was what was being called COVID symptoms of cough, cold, fever, body pain, loss of taste and smell. So there are many things in our environment that are contributing to this sudden symptoms that are coming to so many people. And how many people can go through cough, cold, body pain, and all of that for a whole week, 10 days or 14 days. So many people are, especially who are weak and who are on multiple medications, they are getting seriously affected. So that is what I feel is one of the most damaging things to the biosphere right now. I very clearly know that even when we had 3G for my mobile, it was just like the mobile that I have now, 3G about almost 10 years back. I could do all my emails, watch movies, and do all my file transfers. There was no problem with 3G. But then when 4G came, even people in my own building on my own terrace, I could feel that the presence of the towers was causing insomnia, headaches, and all of that. So people have filed cases, in court to stop the installation of 4G towers close to them because the field is damaging. So we come from that experience of knowing this, and so my immediate, what is the solution to this? The solution was, of course, go back to wired internet, and even to what was called an IP phone. I remember in 2010, I had a Skype phone in which I used to call people from just plug into it into my wired internet hub, and I could call people all across the globe, like how we do now through WhatsApp and all of that. So I'm seeing no change in great change in the usability of the internet. But for some strange reason now, this much harsher energy is being forced upon us. Mainly, I can see it by corporates for a new technology, new science, more money, and they are phasing out the old science over here. So there is a very direct correlation, and there are several reports that have come out over the last whole year, which are plotting the time right from the from the Spanish flu, at the time that the radio waves, the new and new technologies came out. At that very simultaneous time, just with a lag of a week, 10, 15 days, you had these flu epidemics happening across the globe. So that's become too much for people across the globe and the researchers to ignore right now, to make a clear correlation with the current pandemic, COVID pandemic symptoms being related directly to this harsh, permanent energy field that is coming upon human beings. And it's a very simple science. It may be taking some people about 7 days, because once there's a pressure on you on from a field, then your body replies by making its antidote and bucking up its field to match this external environment that is permanent. So that's, so till the time that your body is still trying to recalibrate itself and build its energy body to match this permanent field, you're going to have those symptoms. So that's the very basic science of it. Unfortunately, with more and more towers going out across the globe of this harsh energy, more people are getting the symptoms. So that's what I think is, one of the most big damages that are happening to the biosphere of the earth right now. It's also evidences that it's also affecting plants and animals.
Thank you, Darryl. What would you say is the solution?
So yes, solution would be for us to get back to either 4G or 3G. Or for me, in my surroundings, I just try to do wired internet around my house, and the cable internet does come through fiber optic. And in my own surroundings, I try not to have any Wi-Fi. I try to have only cable internet, minimize the use of mobile, all of that, because I've written about this in my book, Become Healthy or Extinct, how EMFs or electromagnetic fields around the human body are getting more and more with this modernization of our lives, even Bluetooth devices. So that is impinging upon the human body energies or our aura and our chakra fields, that is causing a lot of stress and fatigue. So that would be the solution, to either go back to 3G, 4G, or to wired internet for better health and safety.
Thank you, Darryl. Chandra Vikashi, I'll pose the same question to you. Could you share another aspect of what is damaging our biosphere?
Yeah. So, I take the perspective that it is human actors who are essentially, damaging the biosphere in a way which is irretrievable. So, the biosphere is a dynamic, phenomena. It has its own, various states, and its own natural cycles. But these natural cycles are, spread over a very long period of time. The kind of changes that we are observing in the past, few hundred years is entirely out of what philosophers like Oswald Spengler and the recently released book by David Gaber and the anthropologist, and David Wengro, the archaeologist, called The Dawn of Everything. So what Oswald Spengler talked about the decline of the West about 100 years back very clearly leads us to what's called as the Faustian bargain. So Faustian bargain essentially leads to, in very common layman terms, about selling your soul to the devil. So basically, you make a bargain where you trade off something which may seem beneficial. So there are instant gratification, but you end up paying a price, and you keep shifting the burden to some other time or to some other place. So this goes on and on till the bubble grows so big, and then it bursts. So we are in that window of the bubble which is already burst. So we are not waiting for climate disaster to happen. We are not waiting for some irreparable damage to the Earth's biosphere to happen. Rather, it has already happened, and we are in the midst of it. So from that point of view, I then come back to like what we can do in our daily lives, and through the systems and structures that we have at the local, at the regional, at the country, and at the global levels. So my thesis then leads me to revisit the very lifestyles that we are leading today, things that we have made necessity, things that we consider as essential, which are those Faustian trade-offs which are leading to irreparable damage to the biosphere, which in a way we are stealing the future of our children. We are become cannibalistic, if I can use this very strong term, of the future of our own children. Plus, we've become grossly insensitive to people who we have, kind of shoved to the margins of the society, people who have been, dispossessed, disempowered, and people who do not have a voice in the policy making, or the way this gets implemented. So my concern leads me again, what I've been reiterating in several sessions, to how do we create localized abundance and circular economy? How do we create a truly democratic and representative world body, which is conscientious, which is fair and just to the damages that are happening to the Earth's biosphere, and is willing to rejig the world order in a certain way which becomes healing and leads to repair, rather than further damage and destruction of the biosphere to further points of inflections. So we've already crossed several tipping points. So tipping points essentially relate to states where beyond which a runaway change begins to happen. So we've already, set guidelines. For example, we earlier said that the greenhouse gas levels the particulate density should not exceed 360 parts per million of the all greenhouse gases, which is carbon dioxide, methane, and various other nitrous and sulfurous gases. So that has already now crossed about 415 ppm. Similarly, a few years back, we had set a carbon budget for 2 degrees centigrade as the guide rail temperature, whereas which was then revisited to 1.5 degrees centigrade in the recently concluded Glasgow summit. And but that's all all kind of delusions, because the carbon dioxide and various other gases have much longer shelf life, and they will continue. So whatever that has been already released into the atmosphere, for example, carbon dioxide has a shelf life of 200 years. So that will keep leading to global warming, and not just linearly, but because there will be increased precipitation, so there will be global weirding, there will be more turbulence. So this 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature, and to reach it, the goals that are set for net zero by 2050 and by our own Prime Minister Modi by 2070 are actually meaningless. I mean, they are actually just empty noise, but they have no meaning, because enough greenhouse gas is already there in our atmosphere, which will lead to temperatures rise of 2.5 degrees to 4 degrees centigrade. And at a certain point, what is called the wet bulb temperature, which is about 35 degrees centigrade, sustained over considerable time, plus humidity of about 90%. So this kind of scenario is not only happening in the tropical regions, but far more weirding is happening in the upper latitudes, in Europe, America, Canada, which have considered themselves as far more advanced. But as the tide turns, as destiny would have it, these are the regions which are facing the brunt of climate and ecological weirding, not just in terms of flash floods, not just in terms of much less hours of sunlight. For example, if you look at Europe this year particularly, they had a prolonged rainy season, and then there was the onset of winter with much shorter days. So there is lots of panic, there is lots of chaos, there is lots of turbulence, which has moved from the biospherical turbulence to turbulence in the society, in our minds, and in our health routines. So if we are truly sincere about repairing the damage to our biosphere, we must firstly get back to the natural rhythms. So eating local food, harvesting every drop of rainwater, because there is increased precipitation, so creating more space for water in our urban spaces, creating no waste of the air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, ocean pollution. So all that needs to be kind of mandated as a criminal negligence, as a social hazard. And we need to create zero to landfill, and treat every waste as a technical nutrient. So all that will need considerable changes in our lifestyles and in the policy structures. So for example, even within the ecological activism movement, there are, for example, I'll just illustrate where the real trouble points are. So for example, I was having a debate last few days with a group of people who are climate and ecological activists, but who tend to believe that nuclear power is the solution. So they claim that, if you look at France, then it has more than 50% share of, its electricity consumption from nuclear. And then they talk about recent breakthroughs. Then they talk about even the cold fusion and all these recent developments. So I pointed them that why do we need artificial nuclear reactors? We already have a nuclear powerhouse 93 million miles away, safely tucked, so that there is no radiation hazard and no disposal of radioactive waste issues. There is no waste of water, so there is no danger of a Fukushima-like incident or a Chernobyl or a 100 miles like incident happening again. And there would be no need to propaganda to hide all the damage. For example, in my native state of Jharkhand, in Jadugoda district region, where there is uranium mining, we know that there are so many higher incidences of cancer than the usual population. So certainly artificial enrichment of nuclear fuels and the whole built up of what I call as ecological vandalism of our land and water resources, this is certainly not sustainable. Whereas if we look at the the biosphere, it taps around 130 terawatts of power through photosynthesis. Even human and animals can directly tap the sunlight and heat and the cosmic energies to mitigate and reduce considerably their own consumption based on electricity powered by coal or nuclear or hydel or any other means. So the person who was putting his arguments for nuclear power, they pointed out that somewhere in Africa, 2 billion years back, there are naturally created nuclear reactors. Now we know that that Earth is in a dynamic equilibrium, that it has various natural phenomena, but rather than very humbly and in a harmony and rhythm with Mother Earth, following her house rules, we should be able to rejig our habitats. So rather than living in boxed pigeonholes with poor ventilation, with dependence on artificial cooling or heating in terms of and artificial lighting, running off our mechanical energy, which can be made through human power or through mechanical power, or some amount of electricity being generated through renewable energy sources like biomass, and maybe some amount of solar power. So though there are clear instances that even solar energy has high embedded carbon emissions in it. So all that put together, the counter argument for allowing nuclear is again a Faustian bargain, wherein you just wait for a big accident to happen, and till that time you keep pushing the evidences of smaller leaks, smaller accidents under the carpet. So I think if we are truly serious about the well-being of humans themselves in a very selfish way, as well as for our coming generations, then we need to rethink that. And I'd like to share a small presentation. So I'd like to come to the new fresh guard that we have taken from the COP26, and the various goals that we had set. The first and foremost, the 1.5 degree centigrade guide rail. And for that, we want to accelerate the phase out of coal, curtail deforestation, speed up the switch to electric vehicles, and encourage investment in renewables. Now, all this amounts to, in my opinion, lip service. We need to we need to fast forward, and we need to wake up to the reality that we are already in the midst of a climate breakdown. The Earth's biosphere has already crossed several tipping points, and we cannot wait to at our own convenience to set timelines which simply have no physical significance.
So if I could ask you the same question, could you please share another aspect of what's damaging our biosphere?
So I'll share my perspective based on what I could observe in last couple of years. This starts with the situation in Wuhan. So when situation happened in Wuhan, like everybody else, I was also curious that what is happening, why the people got impacted, what was the root cause, why people were suddenly collapsing on the road, right? And I could not feel that, yes, it could be done with a virus. Virus suddenly cannot reach a stage wherein a healthy people who are walking on the road and they are collapsing suddenly. So I started exploring that what exactly happened, and I was not convinced that it could be due to some virus which can act so fast. A healthy person who's going to office, going to market, and suddenly collapsing. So when I started searching for the evidences which are published in medical journal in China, and there it was surprising to note that they have published a paper in spite of the fact that it has been communicated that what is happening is because of a virus, but it doesn't follow the statistical correlation or causal relationship based on science, wherein the first set of cycle who collapsed on road in Wuhan, they did not have a viral load, majority of them. So 80% people did not have a viral load. Viral load was detected only around 14 people. And the so-called novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, it was isolated in only a couple of people. That is something which was really triggering thought, and it is all was published by the scientists in China, and it was published in their medical journal. And they said that in spite of the fact it is not meeting the scientific analysis on the scientific processes for the research, it is already publicly communicated and people have started taking different measures. Or it is communicated as a pandemic and all that. So there I started searching for that if it is not because of virus, what could be the region wherein people got impacted. So that led to search for the environmental condition, because if it is not virus, there could be some different factor. And science is not restricted only to the virus and bacteria. That is what I believed. And so I started exploring what is happening in China, what is a different environmental factor which could have caused this, especially in one specific city. And there I could see that the environmental pollution in Wuhan for the same duration, that is December end to February mid, was extremely high. That is a particulate matter, PM2.5. It was something around 180 as a measure, and there it talks about the same severity of health condition which was being positioned as a coronavirus issue. So there also they said that people will have to wear N95 masks. They should not go out from home. The children should not go out. Adults should go out only when it is critical. And the measure which are being deployed for a so-called virus, it was exactly the same. Now, once I concluded, and that research I was doing sometime in March before the large-scale pandemic was announced across the globe, including India. And the China, the curve was already flattened by mid-February. 18 February, they had communicated that we have flattened the curve and people are back to home. Not a single COVID clinic or fever clinic have anybody in any of the hospital in Wuhan. So there again, I started exploring that what was the root cause, why the environmental pollution was so high, and that too in the scale of 180, which comes under the severe category. And there might be some factor that for that duration when the people were feeling ill, collapsing on the road and all, what is that which is happening? That led to search for what is this coronavirus, what is this history, when it was identified for the first time in the world, right? And how it has been known to cause diseases. Parallelly, I started searching for other factors also. There I found that the coronavirus, similarly, there is something called corona discharge, which is a physics phenomena, and that is related to high power transmission lines, and that can generate similar particulate matter, which can also have a potential to impact human being and cause respiratory issues and all that. Going further, when I did further research, then I found that that in Wuhan, there was some experimentation going on, which was happening for the first time in the globe. That was deployment of 60 gigahertz frequency range, and we had not anywhere. Wuhan is a to test cars, artificial intelligence, and many other stuff, and that is the precise region. Wuhan was selected as the site by European Union and China together, and there this experimentation was going on. So 4 cities were selected as a part deal between EU and China, and Wuhan was one of those. And other locations they did experimentation with 26 gigahertz and 4.5 to 4.5 hertz. And in Wuhan, it was selected for 60 hertz, and the region was that 60 gigahertz comes under the unlicensed frequency band, and there was no need to pay any additional licenses or any of the what you call spectrum allocation for running this kind of frequency range, because here what happens is the radiation at 60 gigahertz doesn't travel far and it gets absorbed in oxygen. So that was the region they wanted to experiment, because that will be valuable thing for the people who are running IoT operation or AI-based stuff or driverless cars and all that. So there the challenge was, or maybe it is beneficial for them, that the radiation doesn't travel more than 100 to 200 meters and it gets absorbed in oxygen. So that was the region they deployed thousands of antenna. I think 10,000 plus antenna were deployed in Wuhan. And probably that was the thing which was causing the health hazard to people. And that trial for the driverless car was continuing till mid-Feb. So that was another factor which was a clear statistical correlation. And then I started searching for that now how the situation is across the globe. I looked at data in Maldives or the Korea or Italy, and I found that they also faced a similar issue when they went for the commercial launch of 5G, but they named with a different virus. So similar health hazard happened there in Italy, South Korea, and Maldives, but somewhere they said it is because of dengue, somewhere they said it is because of African flu or a swine flu. They even killed millions of pigs, blaming that it is because of swine flu, and even the river in Korea became red. That many pigs were killed there. So what I felt is that whenever something goes wrong, when we do a testing, we'll find some of different microorganism which is already there in our human body. Even this so-called coronavirus, the history said that it is there since 1930. For the first time, it was identified. It was named as a coronavirus. Earlier, it was known as one of the pneumonia virus. And the storyline that it is back to human transmission, I found that it is already concluded in 1960 itself. So if it is there in all of us since 1960, that is back to human transmission, known as a HCOV, a human coronavirus, then there are millions of mutation which has already happened in the last 60 years. So it was not scientifically feasible to say that something is novel, only because we have tested only a few strains, right? But it is flourishing in our body, and even not necessarily only 90 years, maybe it is there for a very long time. And at the same time, this paper which got published, that could not establish the statistical correlation or causal relationship, because when it went to a different location, the testing thing started. Majority of people, in spite of being tested positive, they did not have any kind of symptom. So asymptomatic and disease is definitely oxymoron, and is not establishing the causal relationship. Then I started looking for the different countries across the globe. I looked at Norway, where in 13 Feb, the 5G commercial deployment happened, and there also the same date, the chronograph was launched. Then I looked at Japan, 25th March, the same date it was launched. US, different state, it varied based on the date of commercial launch, and the same day they launched a graph also. So there also I could see the statistical correlation and the causal relationship. The date of commercial launch of 5G is exactly the same date when the commercial launch of 5G has happened. Now, coming back to India, when I looked at Indian situation, I found that many top scientists and researchers, they have already ringing the bell. And there was a team of 250 scientists across the globe who are from different universities, the top university in the globe. They had done an appeal to European Union and even government of India, to the WHO, to UN, that please stop this 5G without completing the safety trial in a what you call controlled environment. So they had done all this appeal, and there we also had people from India that included one of the top scientists in India, Dr. R.S. Sharma, who is with ICMR working in the environmental stuff. Then we had Dr. Girish Kumar from IT Bombay. They all had tried their best to make sure that this doesn't go public until the safety trial has been done. And even the top scientists in India, they had also submitted a what you call committee report, interministerial committee report to government of India, that here are the environmental health hazards which can be caused by radiation. Even I found that some paper were published which included top scientists from Bhabha Atomic Center and all of that. So it was really shocking that in spite of people who are scientific in nature and they are working on this, they have ring the alarm, nothing happened. So coming back to India, I started looking for what is the Indian situation. And because India, the majority of people who were being tested positive, there was no viral load. And if they stayed home in a home quarantine, not a single death was reported. And that is where it again triggered my thought process that yes, India, it is not there. And even the communication came that people who are going to the hospital in spite of being asymptomatic, if they are treated, then there's a health hazard which is causing, including death. So that led me further to explore that the different treatment protocol which might be causing, because most of the medicine which were approved in India uh, did not go through the formal clinical trial, did not go through the any ethics committee approval, and anything or everything, even if it is a medicine related to skin disorder, that were also being included in the treatment protocol. So that's a different topic. But India, what I found is that the 5G massive MIMO antenna got deployed in March 2020, but the activation did not happen in March, April 2020. It got deployed, and then they said it is 5G ready, or 5G turbo, or 5G, 4G plus, 4G turbo, and all that. And the activation happened in March 2021. So there was one of the largest auction in India that was probably more than 75,000 crore. And we could see the similar situation in India in April after the auction which happened in March 2021. And that is where I could see again the causal relationship and statistical correlation in India across the country. And there also it was really difficult to understand the virus which almost did nothing, wherein 99.99% people were asymptomatic, how they started becoming symptomatic, that too at the same time across the country. It is really possible that a virus can start jumping around, and within a couple of days, every city in the country wherein people started facing breathing issues and all that. So there also I could see the auction details and where all it got deployed, which state, which city, and what is the frequency range. That data also I got. So there was a major change which happened that point of time. Before this auction, the frequency range what we had was up to 1 gigahertz, around 900 megahertz and all that. And after this auction, it went up to 2.3 to 2.5 gigahertz. And the data, I could see that which city, which location, what has been done. And that was also establishing the correlation that yes, this is happening probably because of the radiation which suddenly came to public. So what I found is that human body tries to adopt and try to build immunity, uh, even if any kind of attacks comes. And the people who get who are immunocompromised, who have lack of vital energy, they are the people who are primarily impacted. And that was coming out very clearly, that even with the second wave, the majority of people who got severe health hazard, they were the people with the comorbidities, with the diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular issues, and all of that. And at the same time, there was a fear factor also that it is happening, and then many people started testing on the oximeter, And whenever they felt that the oxygen saturation is going down to 60, suddenly they were rushing to the hospital, even if they were not facing any real problem. So psychological problem also happened. And there was another factor which I could see, that there was a major consolidation happened even that point of time. As per previous DOT rule, between two operators, there should be a distance of at least half kilometer for two different antenna. But in this case, there was a major consolidation wherein the single tower can be hosting more than 2 or 3 operators. So that was another consolidation happened, which multiplied the power density in the air. And maybe that was another factor which caused this issue. I could verify that yes, before the auction happened, the infrastructure across the country were upgraded, the power supply were upgraded, and even the generator capacity were upgraded, because it will consume much more power than the 4G. And higher power is needed, but as you go to the sub 6 gigahertz or higher the frequency, to cover a distance, you need to have a larger power density. So unlike 4G, wherein the 4G antenna can cover around 3 to 5 kilometer radius, in this case, the total distance capacity goes down as we increase the power frequency, and also the need to increase the power density. And it is directly correlated to SAR, that is a specific absorption ratio. And March, April timeframe, the organization which is supposed to protect all of us from any kind of radiation impact, they did realize they reduced the power density or SAR value requirement from 1 to 0.8. So this is also one organization, it's called International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. It is a self-proclaimed NGO, which is supposed to be custodian for all the radiation-related issues across the globe. And in India and many of the countries, they follow their standard. But what was shocking to me is that the standard what they're talking about, which is being referred by the DOT, Government of India, and many other countries, including WHO, that IC and IRP says there's no problem, there's nothing to do with radiation and the correlation with health hazard. The last policy and standard what they had developed was in 1998, and that too pre-2G era. So that was again shocking that the organization was supposed to protect. They have done absolutely nothing to do any kind of analysis, and as the radiation moves from 2G to 3G to 4G and the 5G, they still maintain the same narrative that radiation doesn't cause any health hazard on people, in spite of a very clear evidence that they have done absolutely nothing. The standard is remaining same. But what I found is in March, after the Wuhan disaster, they reduced only one factor, that is SCR value from 1 to 0.8, nothing more than that. So this is what is my point of view, and we also need to look at that, how do we protect. I'll share my point of view for that as well.
Yes, Pritam ji, I also would like to add what I mentioned earlier. You were not present here. Was about 5G, and some of the people, were asking me all throughout. They said, well, 5G towers only started happening in March of 2020. Then how come people started getting symptoms from earlier? And well, I replied, yes, at least in my state in Goa, the chief minister of Goa, he had, announced installation of, 200 towers in Goa. But the fact is that in September, October, November of 2019, when we had called up telecom operators like Idea, Airtel, and all of that, and asked them about 5G, they did reply that they are 5G enabled. That means they are receiving that quality of signal, but of course there are no 5G mobiles, so they're not transmitting it. But whatever internet they were getting, they were transmitting it through fiber optics. So I'm just pointing to the fact that the technology was there, it was being received at operators. Now the second fact is that in February of 2020, when I did a retreat in one resort, they were already having what they were calling faster 4G, and that is operating in the range what you talked about, 1.5 megahertz and all of that. I mean gigahertz. So then and from as in since when you all have this, well, they had it for over 6 months. So that there is ample evidence that people were getting the new technology right from the end of 2019. So yeah, so that kind of explains why from when this field actually started building up across the planet.
Yeah, so you are right. The tower installation started in March 2020 at massive scale when the lockdown was started. I could see the press release by Vodafone and Ericsson and all that. It is happening in Mumbai, it is happening in Delhi, it is happening in Pune, Nashik, all of that. But the frequency was not there. So they did little experimentation. And second thing, what they did was as soon as this lockdown started, they took exclusive approval from DOT that all the inspections should be stopped. So there's a portal called Karan wherein you can raise a concern and then get it audited. But the telecom industry put a proposal that until lockdown continues, please do not do any kind of audit. And that is where all this experimental started. But full-fledged thing happened only in April 2021. Massive MIMO got deployed in March 2020. And the frequency got deployed. That is where we could see. And because it got deployed together, that also I could confirm because the deployment happened at the central location. And suddenly you see that every dense city across the country, except rural area, people started feeling sick. So it takes time, and that is where the body works with the self-defense, and many people develop the immunity with a new frequency range. But people with low vital energy, they all got impacted because of radiation plus the different medicine which were given on the experimental basis. Because it was also coming out that many people who are facing the issue, they're not even getting the bed because they were not tested positive.
Thank you, Pritam ji, and thank you, Darryl. I'll now direct my next question to Darryl. There's been a lot of talk about HARP machines since the start of the pandemic and its role in the changing weather patterns we're experiencing now. What is your understanding of it?
So yes, I will just show a few slides and some basic facts about HARP, what it is, because many people have not heard about it. And yes, there are these stations all across the globe, and I read a couple of reports where they are in India as well. So I will just share what that machine is and what it does. Yes, so this is what a HARP station looks like. And this was probably the picture, probably the first one, which was done in Alaska. And now, as you can see, there's an array of certain kind of beams or towers, and there's an access route, and there is a station also there, which is supplying these units power. A little closer look will show that these things are all weather conditioned. That means they are open to weather, and they have got a structure like this, and they build fields of electrical energy that can be projected. So little bit about their details. So like I mentioned, the first picture was of this one in Alaska. And it was a joint venture with all these organizations. Many people have heard the last organization, DARPA, right now, in connection with a lot of technology and surveillance systems that are being deployed during the COVID and pandemic phase. So the meaning of HARP is already there on top. So it's a high power radio frequency transmitter operating in high frequency band. So what are those frequencies? Now this is the power. The HARP directs 3.6 megawatt, and some have the capacity to even go to 1 gigawatt. Now that field that you saw is about typical array of 180 antennas, and the frequency that it uses to put out into the ionosphere is 2.8 to 10 megahertz. The ionosphere is, of course, the sky, and these fields can go from anywhere from 1 kilometers, 10, 20, 300 to about 1,000 kilometers. So they not only can go up in the sky, they can go left, right, horizontal on the surface of the earth as well. And it says over there they produce pulse or continuous signals, and this is all what we are calling radio frequency. And the 10 megahertz tells you that frequency range. Now here are some basic factors. This is, I mean, research that I had done and I was very familiar with in 2009 2010. I come from a background of industrial engineering, but I've been into electronics and magnetics and magnetic fields since I was 14 years old. I made my first electrical motor. So when I was 14 years old, that is, yeah, over 35 years back, I was working with magnetic fields, copper wires, magnets, and, batteries and electricity and all of that. So in the course of my work in health and frequencies within the human body and germ frequencies, I was doing all of this research in 2009-10. So I just pulled out some figures. So you can see pathogen range means bacteria, viruses, small, worms and all of that. Their body material, the content of their material is between this 77 to 900 kilohertz. The harder part of the body, which would be the shell, maybe it's somewhere near 200 or 300 kilohertz. But the softer material like liquid and tissues will be smaller kilohertz. So it's that any organism like the human body also, we got a wide range of frequencies operating right from the liquid, soft tissue, strong muscle to hard bone. Now, if you look at human, okay, the next frequency which we are familiar with is AM radio, and on the AM radio channel, you can always go and look at it, right? It is this. So 540 kilohertz to 1600 kilohertz, which is 1.6 megahertz. Then look at the frequencies of the human body. Our soft matter to our nails to our bones, it goes from, so right. So as the hertz is lower, the material is softer, and then as the hertz go higher, the material gets, harder. When the hertz is lower, the material is harder. When the hertz goes higher, the material gets softer. So now you can't fail to notice that the human body also operates at the same megahertz band as that half machine, where the half machine is 2.8 to 10 megahertz, and the human body is at 1.5 to 9.5 megahertz. Now, what is the meaning of this, right? It means that the radiation from these machines that can go into so many kilometers, up to 1,000 kilometers up in the side, it could be also, reaching the human body. Now, some very basic thing, what I will just show a couple of videos. Okay, here's another one for familiarity, FM radio. It works from 88 megahertz to 108 megahertz. So I will just show another couple of videos now to help people understand what can these frequencies do. Yes, that's a video. And what is this? This is a microscopic view of a kind of a germ in a medium of liquid and maybe in a petri dish. And the frequency of that germ is being played either through sound or through vibration or through an electrical signal. And let us see what is happening to that germ. So the germ stops moving because some disturbance is there, and they are applying this frequency of 1150 hertz. So what happens is, when you play the same frequency and you increase the amplitude, this is another germ, you can see the shell of that germ is erupting and it is getting destroyed. So biological matter will get destroyed. Now I want to show another video as well of something more harder than just soft this organism. Yes, it's of glass. And what's happening here? They are playing a sound. There's something holding the glass so that nothing else is touching it. Okay, so what has happened here is playing the frequency of the glass. Glass like this is its frequency of the matter somewhere near 555. Remember that 555 hertz. So even the opera singer, a lady with a soft voice in a closed auditorium, who's singing a high, a note, and you have something as hard as glass, it will crack. So what I'm saying is sound and frequency can be used to damage and destroy not only biological material but something as hard as glass, right? So I am very familiar with all of this because I used to use a machine that is here. I'll show you another picture. What's called a synchronometer. I had made one myself in my own home. Uh, so So anybody who has been very deeply into bioelectronics or magnetobiology, or who knows the work of Nikola Tesla and the Tesla tubes, and also Rife frequencies and the work of Dr. Hulda Clark of making such machines and basically killing living organisms in that frequency pathogen range within the human body by such contact devices, which is called an electronic zapper. Okay, so they are very familiar that with such small instruments that you can kill living organisms. And the fact is, like I showed in the video, that's not only a small cell, that could be the cell of your lungs as well, which will get inflamed if you play that frequency with a very strong amplitude. So the lungs have got a frequency, your brain has got a frequency, and any radiation that is matching that frequency, if it is put in your vicinity and if the amplitude is turned high, then you can have it match a resonance and it can destroy that material. Okay, so this anybody who wants to understand more of this can connect with me privately later. I will share all my research of the last 10 years in this field. So now I'll just continue with that presentation on, the what I was showing about the half machine. 1 second. Yes. So what I'm saying is, yes, such a machine may have many functions. It is always put out as a research, right? Now you match the other things that are also research and experimental in nature. We have a vaccine also that is experimental in nature and supposed to heal you, but many people are dropping dead after 3 hours to 6 hours from it. So is it deliberate or are people making a mistake with the vaccine technology? That's one point. Now, people who have researched the pandemic also very deeply have said that this was a declared pandemic, and in fact, it was a test simulation 1 and simulation 2. The simulation 1 of the test of the experiment actually went into the live phase, and that became the first stage of our first wave. And the second part of that simulation went into the second phase. So, what we are seeing here is a repeated pattern where things that are being called as experiment, as a research, and all that is finally going out of hand and getting to a place where it is damaging us. So definitely, I think even in India, we need to set up a special scientific committee, at least in this country or other countries as well, that are doing a thorough audit of such technologies. Now, on the websites, anywhere you go from HARP, you will see some further statements also like this, because these are deployed in the public domain with public knowledge and by publicizing certain things. So even 5G, everybody is told that the benefits are faster G and you can get your full movie and downloaded in 10 seconds. But I don't understand the sense when you're going to watch it in half 1 hour, then why you have to download it in 10 seconds. So further things you will see about these machines on the websites, main capabilities of HARP, they are made for all of this. Very low frequency, very high frequency. It's covering these entire ranges. Invisible, of course, radiation. So you could see that, even up to such low hertz, it has that range. And you also saw in the previous wording, it's a high frequency setup as well. So these are all the declared things and the reasons for the research. But what I clearly can say from my experience and scientific, research on all of this, and having made these small electronic zapper machines myself, I can clearly say this is a big danger. Audits need to happen on these, and this is what I'm saying. This is another damage to our biosphere. So much of this is used in aerospace, this research and that research, measuring things in the air. Now, measuring things in the air, how is it going to change your real life experience, right? For example, one more thing which everybody would agree to, one of the biggest damages in the biosphere is the amount of pollution that is coming from all these vehicles, which I've covered earlier also in this summit webinars, either from transporting our packaged food products or going to work. And that's why we have worked out this self-sustained, eco-friendly, a green circular economy kind of system where people don't need to walk more than 15-20 minutes in a day to get to their place of work, to get to their place of recreation, their food, growing organic, all of that. So the solution, of course, we all know it very clearly, is to make more such self-sufficient cities and bring down the amount of vehicles and all this mechanized way of living that seems to only make sense for the capitalists, the guys who want us to pay them to make them rich and make all these technologies that are eating up the earth, and also, I mean, making holes in the ground and also polluting the biosphere. That seems to be their game plan, and we don't seem to have our game plan, or refusing such things, not only because they're bad for our health, but because they're bad for the earth, and proposing models that are more local and more, that do not use all these harsh technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Darryl, for elaborating on HARP. Before we go to the audience's Q&A, is there anyone in the panelists that would like to add more biosphere problems and their solutions?
I would like to share a little bit on the same lines what Darryl talked about. So I was part of advisory committee of some analysis of 130 genome sequencing of different variant of coronavirus. And what was concluded even that point of time was that it is still not coming out whether vaccine can really impact the single strain RNA virus. And the frequency with a sonic attack, with the same frequency, it can dismantle. And the research paper has been published in London Journal Press. That also I can share with you. So this is led by Dr. Ithirajan Govindrajan, who had done his PhD from IIT Kanpur, and complete data, different frequency for different genome sequences available. And that could also lead to designing a different frequency pattern, which can dismantle not only the coronavirus or any kind of virus once we identify the different frequency that can be done. So I'll share that, and maybe we can invite him also in the next set of sessions wherein he can share the detailed analysis on the entire research paper which got published in London Press.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Pritamji.
Yeah, Pritam ji and Darryl, my inquiry goes into like, there are these next generation communication networks being made available, and they're all happening in the public domain. Now, what I go back to about the Faucian bargain is that we are the ones who are agreeing to the online classes. We are the ones who want so much of e-commerce to happen, where at the click of a few buttons, we get the stuff home with all the wasteful packaging. We are in a way colluding into this pandrama, into this Faucian bargain, where we are seeking certain instant gratification and shifting the burden to future generations, to people on the margins. And we may do excellent technical research of how the the new technologies are breaking our membranes, and even they can shatter glass and all that is, is quite enticing, quite fascinating. But my point again is that unless we start working at two levels, the first level is in our own life. How do we live it up? How do we give up certain habits which are fueling this kind of technological explosion, which is leading to harming the biosphere or our own biology. At the same time, if we like for example, Pritam ji mentioned about a particular NGO which is supposed to regulate what kind of ionizing atmosphere is getting created. But or similarly, we have the WHO, which is creating regulations. But where is the accountability? Where is the transparency? Why don't we question the global world order today in a way that the United Nations, for example, which is the topmost world body, is actually a club of the aggressors of Second World War? The people who are sitting in the Security Council are the same countries which were shedding all the blood and leading to so much of loss of innocent lives, which led to the UN Charter that there should not be any further genocide, any further war, no loss of innocent lives. And yet what we are seeing, there are documented 12 instances in Syria, in Yemen, in Rwanda, in Sudan, and in Iraq, where we are seeing that blatantly the UN Charter is getting violated, and yet 7.8 billion of us are not demanding that UN should be dissolved and that it should be replaced by a truly representative and democratic world body, which also has arms, which regulates what kind of telecom frequency should be in use. So rather than just become kind of cryptpods, and rather than just complain and go on and on with the problems, I think we need to put our minds and hearts together and focus on how we can create grassroots to global governance systems and structures which will lead us to a better world, a safer world, a healthier world, a more harmonious world. So I'll come to more, far more realistic issues, which I believe are damaging the biosphere. And I'll come back to my narrative, and I'll just again share the screen. Come back to the goals that were set by COP26, and in that the second goal very prominently is to protect communities and natural habitats. Now, there is so much of slip between the cup and the lip. The goals are very noble and very lofty, but when we look at their actual steps, there's a complete loss of trust. There's a complete slippage, because the path dependencies that are created by the corporations, by the governments, by the research institutions, the laboratories that are set up are continuing to work in the directions in which money is being poured, where the commercial interests are driving them. Whereas what we need is more spirituality. What we need is a cultural revolution to protect and restore ecosystems, to build defenses, warning systems, and resilient infrastructure. Now, all that leads to solutions which we have already encapsulated in what Darryl calls as the eco-village model, what Hitesh Chandel talks about as wise city model, and what I like to describe as the localized abundance and circular economy, the LACE model. So in that, as we move further to our next slide, what it shows up is that, so the goal number 3 again needs our attention, which is about the mobilizing finance. Now, I go back to again to the decline of the West by Oswald Spengler, which is a phenomenal work which showed that the Western world, which he calls as a Faustian culture, which has inherently made this bargain with the devil to sell its soul for certain instant gratification, to be able to control the world through monetary systems. And it has well entrenched tentacles through the reserve banking systems, through the central banks, and through the arms and ammunition, the military industry complex, by which it can dispose of. It can simply assassinate heads of state who resist. And we saw that in case of Saddam Hussein, in case of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, and various African leaders. Now, if we are serious about goal number 3, which is to create resources for the new pathways that we want to create, where we can heal and repair the biosphere of the earth, we need to talk in a very different currency. It cannot any longer be the debauched US dollar. It cannot be the euro, or it cannot be the Chinese yuan. It has to be a new currency which is controlled by the truly representative and democratic world body, which we are calling as Gaia at Sunset. So it has to be the Gaia currency. We may continue to use some of the digital infrastructure, but the pricing and the indexing that the new currency will have with local currencies, the exchange rates that will be set, how much of currency can be printed, and how it creates distributive justice, has to be rethought. It cannot be 1% versus the 99% that David Graeber talked about. And we are talking about the newly released book called The Dawn of Everything. Now, in The Dawn of Everything, which is a very radical rethink of the Western propositions, which says that the Renaissance was not created out of European churning, but Renaissance was created when the European thought leaders got into dialogue with the indigenous communities, and they addressed some of the lacunas or some of the fatal flaws of the Western paradigm. There was too much of stratification. There was too much of the feudal and the serf relationship. There was too much of barbarism, too much of bloodshed. So if we are serious about mobilizing finance and decoupling the finance with the military defense complexes, which are threatening us from living our lives in a very naturally harmonious way, in a locally abundant and in a circular economies, which may be much simpler because the energy intensities may be much lower. But when we go on the trajectory of higher art, higher music, dance, literature, and visual arts, we realize that life would be lots more fulfilling. Life would be far more abundant and full of splendor than what we are witnessing, in the age of darkness and in the age of disease. I mean, what's the pleasure of having so many fancy devices when so many of us, according to the WHO itself, more than 96% of the people on earth today are not healthy. So we talk about health is wealth. We talk about compassion. We talk about working together, which is the fourth goal set up for COP26. And I'll just go back to the basics that again, at the end of COP26, after about a fortnight, everyone ridicules it as a fiasco. Now, the COP26 happens, then the preparation starts for the COP27. We just forget to hold the people who we are paying our taxes to, people who are in authority, to hold them accountable for what they promise in these international meets. So I'll come to now the fundamentals of where the Western civilization has derailed, because we are primarily living in that Faustian rule book, where we are all, including Darryl, including Pratim, we are all making that bargain. We are all making that trade-off. And unless we question that fundamental, that, for example, the doctrine of discovery itself, where the church entitled the conquistadors, the papal bulls, told them that any land that you discover is yours. Now, this was a blatant sin. It was a criminal negligence, and America was set up. America is an occupied territory. All the DARPA and all the all this chimerical madness is coming out of a land which is not free, and we're not questioning the the fairness that the people of the native people of what is called America today. Its original name is the Turtle Islands. There's so much of butchering. So the livestock were killed, the bisons, so that the ecosystems get disrupted. And Darryl, while it is very fascinating to get sucked into modern technology and be its critique, I think we need to widen our canvas and go back in time to where the trouble really starts. We need to start questioning the fundamentals of America itself, why it is an occupied territory when we are talking about freedom and liberty and equality and fraternity in a progressive world of the 21st century. So where I see the problem leading to is that there is danger ahead, and it is inevitably leading us to extinction, not something that we need to wait for, but something that we are already in the mouth of. So what both Oswald Splendor as well as David Gaber talk about is the cyclicality. And the cyclicality, the Charaivati Siddhant, the Kal Chakra is already so intrinsic pillar, is so inherent into the Hindu cosmology, into the indigenous cosmology, that whatever goes around comes around. So if we are to undo the damage to our biosphere, which is the title of the webinar today, we need to keep talking about and keep harping about the indigenous world order. And from that, we need to understand that cutting down our consumption of our present, enormously productive economy that demands to make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burnt up, worn out. That is where our salaries are coming from. That is what David Graeber, in his other book, the 5,000 years and bullshit jobs, talks about, that most of us, including people working for TCS and Infosys and the IBMs and the General Electric and Google and Facebook, most of these are bullshit jobs, because they are not leading, they are not creating any net value to our lives, to our local communities, or to humanity as a whole. So David Graeber unfortunately died last year, and he was another victim of the this COVID lockdown. And since I tend to investigate deeper, I'm certain that he was actually killed because of the protocols that were unleashed in Europe. He was caught in Italy at that point of time where he died, where he was on a vacation with his wife, who's a Russian Jew. And according to his wife's account, he was too frustrated with the lockdown protocols and all the turbulence that was happening all around, and he died of something called pancreatic necrosis. And before that, he was a very healthy person. So it was the sanitizers, it was the constant masking, it was the lockdown protocols which consumed his life. and he is considered to be one of the most brilliant thinkers. He was also the founder of the Occupy Wall Street movement. So I come back to the point that we are not now waiting for climate disaster. We are actually witnessing the climate disaster unfolding. We are waiting for the damage of the Earth's biosphere to move from one tipping point to another, till a point comes where it hits a point of no return, where Earth, despite all its resilience, despite all its checks and balances, that as a mother she takes care of all her beings, not just the human species, but also all flora and fauna. But if we keep stretching the limits from, in 2017 itself, the Time magazine had declared that there were only 3 years. And what has happened? What is the our performance report in these 3 years? Carbon emissions have only further shot up. There is the COP26 in Glasgow has also ended, but we have not come to terms with how to give up motor cars, how to give up air conditioners, how to give up so many electrical appliances that we have become so paralytically, which have become prosthetic devices, without which we think that we'll be handicapped and will anyway not survive. But we are not focusing on innovations that will lead to alternatives which are far more naturally powered, either by sunlight or by human power or by some kind of animal traction. So I'd like to put it in a conceptual framework, that it's ultimately what we are talking about, artificial intelligence, which powers so many of these technologies, is actually systems ignorance. Why it is systems ignorance is because it's making that Faustian bargain. It is ultimately violating what I come to as the 3-screen test, which all the indigenous societies had before a product was publicly made available and put in use. So the artificial intelligence, which is rooted in the mechanistic, reductionist, atomization, and the notion of independence, has to be replaced by indigenous or natural intelligence. It has to be systemic, it has to be holistic, it has to focus on integration, interdependence, and move from modernization to post-modernization. So that's the, so from the neo-colonialist world order, we need a new world order. We need a great reset, or our friends like to call it as the great awakening. We need to move from the age of disease and the age of darkness that the the fatally flawed European Renaissance thrust us into, to an indigenous world order. And that's now my final few slides. Just talk about what exactly did we bargain? Where exactly did we go wrong? So this is what indigenous societies across the world have maintained as what I would like to call as the 3-screen test. And this also tallies with the principles of total quality management to weed out defects at the earliest stage of the process. So what's the first screen? The first screen is of the physical scientist, the Bhautik Vaigyanik, who asks, is the product useful? So certainly a mobile phone is useful because you can talk across different distant locations. You can share images, you can share data, you can do lots of computing and calculations, and you can talk in real time like we are doing right now. But then there is a second screen through which the testing must pass through. It's of the doctor, of the Vaidya. The Vaidya asks, is the product good for health? And if, as Darryl has so brilliantly demonstrated, that, and what Pratik has shared, that the 5G technology was not good for us, and we knew it 3 years before it was allowed to be launched. But we didn't defeat the narrative. We didn't create a larger narrative which would be far more attractive than the online classes. We failed in that department. We failed to, the good people with all their noble intentions, failed to unite and harmonize their agendas We continue to work in our silos till the devil with its Faustian bargain has the sword dangling over our heads. Our children are out of school, out of college. The entire educational curriculum is thrown out of gear. Our food systems is getting ruptured. Our farmers are committing suicide. So certainly, if the product is not good for health, it would never be allowed for public consumption. It would only be restricted to laboratory experiments. The third screen, even if, let's say, a certain thing was considered healthy, it didn't have a direct impact on the physical health. But then it would go to the philosopher or the darshanik, the seer scientist. And the seer scientist would ask, people like Oswald Spengler, people like David Graeber, who I mentioned in my presentation so far, they would ask, is it good for the society? Is it good for the society to concentrate wealth in just 1% of the global population and deprive 99%? People, 250 million people going hungry every day. Our children, stunting and wasting of children in ancient civilization like India, infant mortality rates, violence in the womb. So all this put together, if the philosopher tells that it's not good for the society, however brilliant, however fascinating the invention may be, it would never see the light of the day. It would never be in public consumption. So I just end my presentation here and leave time for the question and answers. So though I was slow to start because the subject of damaging biosphere is so vast. There's so many elements. Darryl chose to focus on the communication bandwidths and how they can cause intrusive damage to our specific organs. And Pratik shared about how the checks and balances were kind of cast aside, how the warning signals by 250 scientists, the eminent scientists. But why didn't those scientists become activists like so many others? Why do we think that our role is just to be researchers to publish papers in peer-reviewed journals and to simply make noise in webinars like this? Why can't we get on the streets like millions of people are doing all over the world today? So ultimately, my point very clearly is that we need to assess that climate is changing not just at the physical, at the biosphere level, but in the social sphere, in the behavioral, and also the metaphysical. We need to take all the holistic perspective of where we are going wrong and be constantly aware and conscientious of our responsibility to the youth and children and how we need to assure their survival for a bright and sustainable future. So coming to my final slide, that why this disintegration is happening, I've already explained in course of this. So I think on a sober note that what we are witnessing today, I for instance am not deterred. I'm not panicking. I don't think there is any cause for distress. This is our karma. The dance of life, the dance of Shiva is going on. We have to, in a sense of surrender, with our nimitta bhav, play our roles that is set aside for us to the best of our abilities. So our prarabdha and our purusharth have to go hand in hand, and then only we will be able to overwhelm, draw a bigger line to the United Nations or to the global public-private partnership, which is a humongous hydra-headed monster with its tentacles in every institution, from a TCS to where I worked, or Infosys or an IBM, or the government, the Modi regime, or the American government, or the Brazilian government, or the the multilateral institutions, the NGOs, the academic institutions, so the industry. So all that is part and parcel of the humongous framework called the Global Public-Private Partnership, though the name sounds very innocuous, but we need to move away from the Faustian bargain of selling our soul for certain instant gratification, and also to protect our hubris, because we have a path dependency. We like to shout from the rooftops that the last 100 years has been so much of phenomenal technological progress. We have pulled so many people out of poverty and then condemned them once again to disease and murky existence, where I do write some poetry, and maybe I'll share that in another session. The skeletons are beginning to fall out of the cupboards. What Steven Pinker, in his phenomenal book, which Bill Gates, for example, likes to quote, it's called Better Angels of Our Nature. Now, the better angels, as I tweeted to Mr. Steven Pinker just a couple of days back, have become fallen angels. We need to raise ourselves. We need to get on our feet and raise the bar to be able to overcome the challenges and to be able to live up to our moral responsibility to people on the margins, people who are not yet directly affected, though that number is shrinking every day. And of course, to our children and to our coming generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. Vikash ji.
Yes, responding to how people are making these choices. Of course, we have been in that space some years back till we got wiser, and I just think it's that people have been used to so many products and services because they have been placed in a system, and all that they know is to use those products and services of the system. So I'm coming to that question: why are people in these metro cities living these toxic lives and doing all of this consumption and driving these petrol cars and all of that? So the simple answer is that simple question is, if I can give any city-based person more money, more health, more comfort, more time and free, time and recreation, more time with nature, wouldn't they come to another location instead of being in this place? So the key point is, so many of these people are caught in this system because of the money and the comforts. Now, who has set up the system? It is these guys who think they have got technologies. We have to understand that we have been put in a trap. We are there because of money, and now because we are there, we are having this high consumption patterns. So we have to be very clear that can we get out of this? And that's what the New Earth Summit model is all about: a more low carbon footprint. I mean, the tree, that whole presentation that I gave of the tree economy, that your life, health, food, products and everything that you need in life, even homes and all of that, can be just made from something as natural as trees. And if you have it in a community like this, there is not many factories and machines to be run. It's just a cottage industry that is doing everything without so much of pollution. Now, all that I have to give you is the same money or a little more money, and will bring them into another environment. So this is the message that I want to give people. You have to understand that you have gone into a trap of this high consumerism, this this system that is destroying the earth with every passing day. You have to understand the trap. You are in it because of the money. And so, like Chandra Vikas ji said, so many of these jobs are completely actually useless and adding no value to the earth or no value to human life. Because you're there, you're doing all these measurements, the entire finance system, that people are working for, so much of IT, so much of the machines that are running, you have to understand it's using up the earth and it's creating all of this. So also in this system, you are locked into buying all those products, services, driving your vehicles every day, and that is polluting the biosphere. So be very clear that if you want to get out of this, that you need to get to a place where you will get money in a better, clean environment. You take your entire family and your relatives, if that's what you want, sell everybody into that model and come to a different space. That is the biggest solution that you can be, and that's the reason. So these webinars that we're doing is to bring you this awareness that this is the whole cycle. These are the damaging technologies, products, and services. And know that if you participate in this, you are participating in the uh, future of the earth that doesn't have another 20-25 years. So I think it's time for all of us to make that choice, and that's why I also spoke on a couple of webinars back. Do the morning to evening audit of everything you use and see how artificial it is, and imagine those factories that run and all that, those people who work to do it, and instead opt for a natural option. So that's, I think, the way that choosing natural products will automatically get you into the space where the damage to the biosphere and all is the minimum.
Yeah. Yeah, Darryl, I'd just like to add that, actually it's not a bad bargain when we trade off, lots of high energy intensive appliances for more humbler looking. Actually, it becomes a rude shock only when you're not prepared for it. If you don't see things coming, how things are going to shape up over the years. So luckily, by whatever freaky coincidence, I figured out way back in the year 2000 itself, and when the September 9/11 incident happened, and I dug out the details that it was actually a self-inflicted, terrorist attack that America did, that George Bush did, to fuel to inflame Islamophobia. So when I figured that out, I said that that's the end of the story. And if you want to read, people who are very scholarly, because I'm not an academician, I am an activist primarily. I don't even claim to be a scholar, because beyond some blogs and some articles, I don't write much. But please read Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West. Please read the just released The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber. And the reason why I would never write a book myself in my whole lifetime is because enough has been written, enough has been said. We need practitioners. We don't need, yes, we need to preach, but we don't want to listen to Al Gores who live in, massive Mac mansions and then talk about, zero carbon emissions. We don't want to listen to these hypocrites, these bastards. I mean, sorry to use unparliamentary language. You already warned me before. We want to listen to humble people who are living what they preach, who are walking the talk, who are actually fetching their vegetables on their bicycle. Because sometimes, you may like to say that 15-20 minutes walking, but we are all trapped in a metered existence where, the electricity meter is running, the house EMI meter is running. So many, meters are constantly ticking. So you are actually a prisoner of your own choices. So what I would suggest is that we at New Earth Summit, at the Gaia Alliance that we are forming, and Darryl, towards the end, you would like to invite more and more people like Pritam ji, who are so conscientious, so knowledgeable, to this larger alliance where we are claiming that United Nations needs to be dissolved and replaced by Gaia Earth Sansad by 5th of June 2022. And how we plan to set up the meetings in the Prime Minister office, and already all the groundwork that we've been doing for the past about 20 years. So my position very clearly is that I'm not selling hope, I'm not selling any optimism, but I am raising the flag that if you start questioning where things are going wrong, if you do a little bit of history reading, because like they say, if you're not aware of history, you are condemned to repeat it. If you don't want to be in for rude shocks, because even your wife may have a very different philosophy. Darryl, in a way, I'm just thinking aloud that you're lucky that you can make all your choices. But what do you do when your teenage children in college and school, where there's an ecosystem that you are tied up to? So you have choices. You have to make choices and start unfolding into the new lifestyle right from where you are.
So if I can quickly wrap this up by asking Pritam ji if he would like to add anything else.
Yeah, so I'd like to share Personally, I am living away from the city life for last 8 years at the outskirts of Bangalore, near the forest, surrounded by hills and trees and all of that. So I do experience those difficulties which are not available here, right? But again, I go to city maybe once or twice in a year if it is really mandatory. And if I go to city, I really get headache. I'm adjusted to this life wherein there's no single house within 1 kilometer from my house. Nobody's living around, but it's all surrounded by hills and trees and all of that. Second thing, I also come from those organizations you spoke about, and to share, as you said, that yes, it is time to come on the ground. So this month end is the last date in working in one of the largest corporate. The name you already mentioned, one of those. And going forward, I need to dedicate my life on the current situation. A lot of experimentation which is happening as I speak, and many people do not know, they do not understand. So it is all driven by few people who has got severe psychological problem. One of those is well known as called Bill Gates. He felt that it is a volcano eruption. There's some gaseous element which can create a layer in the atmosphere which can reduce the temperature by 1 degree or 1.5 degree. That is a target the globe is moving toward. And that did not get a approval from ethics because it will cause many other disaster which are unknown. But he tried a lot to implement geoengineering across the globe. And what I see is that even if that approval did not come, there are two things which are still happening. One of the major impact would be on the agriculture system once we reduce the temperature with artificial means with creating a layer of gas. So all that which is happening is also to what you call store the crop, vegetables and fruit when they do experimentation so that it doesn't impact. Somehow farmers in India did not allow that to happen, but the region to do many things which are driven by UN to store the food which can be stored for a few years when they go for experimentation. But at the same time, when you look at volcano eruption in last 2 years, the number has gone up a few hundred percentage, right? So while the overall global trial for geoengineering did not get approved, but something is happening, something is going on, and you see the weather pattern which is changing dramatically, the kind of rains which are happening in different cities in South India. When you look at the PM 2.5 in the ocean, the Mumbai and this Bay of Bengal, the PM 2.5 is very, very high. And that is the same particle which can be done with artificial insemination of the cloud seeding and all of that. So all that experimentation is going on. Many people are not aware about it. And I would request all of you to look at the data on volcano eruption in last 2 years and what is happening and what needs to be done to safeguard ourselves. The people who are there on the ground, they have done their best, but there's a saying in Hindi, "Bhans ke aage been bajao, bhans bet pagarai." That is what is happening everywhere. People are aware, they are not understanding this. Whenever it is being raised, they said the person is belonging to Tukde gang and whatever. There's nothing to do with science. That's what I see in last 2 years, right? Whether it is starting from lockdown, putting a mask or social distance, there's nothing which has been validated with the so-called science, that is clinical trial or what you call approval from ethics committee or statistical correlation or causal relation. There's nothing, but it is all being imposed by few people with a psychological problem to public at large. Till date, when we go back and look at the Ministry of Health or National Health Mission, they still say on their website that there's no scientific evidence that masks can protect from any microorganism or virus or anything, and it can do more harm. So that is the official version of Ministry of Health, but what is being executed, I'm not able to understand that who is pushing all of this. And the appeal, scientists, they did appeal everywhere, including Supreme Court of India, that this is the health hazard which is going to happen. They visualized the pandemic-like situation on the paper they published. And for last 30 years, 25,000 plus paper has been published on the environmental health hazard because of radiation. There's a beautiful book called Invisible Rainbow that talks about starting from the electrification which happened in the globe 100 years ago. That was one of the factors which led to a Spanish flu. So what happens is whenever there's a health disaster, this narrow thinking or reductionist thinking They only look at the bacteria and virus. When they look at it, you will find something, right? When you find something and then map it to 10 people, if it is there, that doesn't mean that it is establishing a causal relationship. But when you find that in 10 people, then you can declare that, yes, this is a virus which is causing this problem. And that is where it has been redirected. So now it is time to put the science together. And I'm moving out from this so-called corporate sector in spite of very fulfilling, inspiring career for last 25 years to dedicate my life in the public health. And I got this opportunity as a fellow in Gandhian philosophy. That is a way forward. So a lot of things needs to be done. So I'm happy that things are happening. People like you and Darryl is really moving on the ground. So far I had issues in speaking publicly with a corporate tag attached. So I was reluctant. I was talking in person to people, but again, this I think second time I'm coming in the public forum. So I was talking for last 2 years, but now I'll be more visible to share whatever I feel like. Thank you for the.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Pritam ji. If we could quickly
Just to
wrap
add
up.
to Pritam ji's, Sophie, just one intervention that I would like to make. You mentioned about bhains ke aage been bajaye, bhains baiti paguraye. Pritam ji, there is another idiom called jiski lathi uski bhains. The lathi right now is with the club of aggressors who form the United Nations. So welcome to your new freedom. I think so, and I'm sure I would like to listen to lots more of your very deep and rich knowledge of how to unravel the secrets of the the various technologies, and where the scientific activism, which limits itself to making petitions, needs to finally get in the streets in the spirit of participatory democracy, because we have nothing to lose and yet we have everything to lose. We have moral responsibilities to our children, and we will not be able to fulfill them unless we throw out these jokers and we take away their reason for existence. There are already billboards saying that these are traitorous politicians. There is a disclosure in Slovenia by a head nurse that there are 3 kinds of vaccines which are labeled. Number 1, which is just saline, is for politicians. Number 2 is just the actual vaccine, which is the spike, the graphene and all that. That's second part. That's for common public, and there is killer shots, which is for targeted killing because you have the social identification number. So I think we have no time to lose, and it's so heartening to see people like you, walking out of the what I call as the corporate trap. And I'm sure Darryl is doing such an excellent job. So I would like to listen to more of you in the rest of the sessions on the New Earth Summit as well. That's just a request. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra Vikash ji. I have a couple of questions that from the audience. If we can wrap it up in 5 minutes. Subangi asks, all panelists keep indicating that coronavirus is a myth. While I agree a lot on the points raised, I still have a question. Our entire family was COVID positive, and I can say with conviction that it is nothing like a normal fever. My taste and smell has changed since then. In fact, it took me 6 months to get slight smell and taste. So I believe there is no denying this is a different affliction. So please, requesting you to shed some light on this.
So I'll take this question.
Yes.
And I have a question too. That what was the time frame this issue happened? That was the phase 1 or phase 2 during time 2021.
Yes, by the time she replies to that, I would just like to reply 2 points. One is that, yes, when I explained, I clearly explained the difference between the earlier systems or 3G, 4G causing a 5 to 7, 6 days flu, and now the 5G being much more harsh in frequency and closer proximity is causing 14 to even 21 days flu. So definitely, even I have seen that it's not the same old affliction. It is for the people who are getting it, it's they are going through double the amount of suffering, and to that point that the aged people and people who are on a lot of comorbid medicines, their immunity is going down very low, and then emergency drugs in the hospital have cross reactions with them, and sometimes they're dying in the ICU. So yes, that is the reason why it's not like the earlier ones. It's much harsher. That's very right. And the second thing is about your taste and smell. Taking so long to come back. My mother's taste also took about a month. So we have to understand biologically something very clear. Everybody has experienced this. Okay, is that when you get a infection, urinary tract infection, blood infection, what it is, if it's a parasite, something living in your body, you know that it is damaging you. Within a week, 10, 15 days, you can die if you do not take the proper, corrective treatment. It could be natural treatment or the emergency is antibiotics. Take the antibiotics in a few days and your infection gets killed. Now, in this process, we know, of course, we are not losing our taste and smell and all of that. And the system responds in a week or 10 days time, and we are okay. So again, this is the second indicator that it's not a biological organism. But from what I explained, that when this permanent field that is harsh is there in your system, your body takes 1 week to 15 days or more to adapt to it. So from that, we have to get the clear indication that the entire bodies, all of the hundreds of systems that are running in the human body, they have to recalibrate, they have to rebalance themselves. So that's why for some people it may take a much longer time. So this is the response from the human body of readjusting all its symptoms till the deeper work of your liver, and so many things happen that brings back your taste and smell after such a long time. So even this is very good evidence. If people are getting their smell after 2, 3, 4 months, it is obviously not because of some germs. Because germs and all, if you were still being damaged by the germ, you would have been dead within a month or so. Like how people die of cancer of the liver and all of that. That's very detailed in my book on Become Healthy or Extinct in the cancer chapter. Why the three different types of causes for cancer. One is energy cancers, one is substance cancers, and one is parasitic cancers. So if you read that in detail, you will understand that how do parasites behave and what is the immediate effect on the human body. And when it is the human body itself readjusting to a new environment, then it takes a much longer time.
So I would like to talk about one of the largest projects in the world. It is called Human Gut Microbiome. That spanned more than 15 years. And there that has debunked the of the Western medical philosophy, wherein they talk about that everything what we see is a viral load and all that is all disease. So the gut microbiome project revealed that there's nothing called pathogenic or nothing called virus. What happens is that when you have a more toxic load, there's a role which is defined for certain fungi or bacterial family to start decomposing those. And there's a time frame, the number of bacterial family increases. And when this happens, the body has two mechanisms. One is the alarm mechanism. Second one is the self-defense mechanism. Whenever there's an attack on the human body, it behaves in a way to protect itself, wherein you see that there would be vomiting symptoms, there would be the diarrhea, there would be fever. All that is a defense mechanism, as the innate ability of the human being to protect. Even the cough and cold is also a mucus layer which is being created to protect the lungs if there's a cold situation or cold environment all across. However, this human outcome of the human gut microbiome can reboot the entire system, and wherein they have already identified more than 300 trillion bacterial family in human body, which is probably much larger than the human cells what we have. And there they talk about the treatment also related to microbes. So this situation, as you already responded, that it was second phase. Second phase, when the radiation was launched across the country after the massive auction of frequency range, which is same as a microwave oven frequency. Our microwave oven works at 2.45 gigahertz, and what was being deployed across the country with much higher power density compared to microwave oven was 1.8 to 2.5 gigahertz. So when the new frequency comes, then frequency can cause a severe vibration in every cell of the human body, to the plant, to the animals, to the atmosphere. So that vibration can be considered as an attack. When it is considered an attack, then body will start increasing its temperature based on self-defense mechanism or different thing until the immunity is established. And that is where the focus is more towards protecting the human body, and the temperature will go up and all of that, which Western philosophy call it as a disease. But from when we look at the Indian ancient wisdom, which revolves around Ayurveda or nature cure or Charaka Samhita or different Samhitas which are there in different Vedas, it is all defense mechanism. So people have gone through that process, and few people with a low vital energy got severely impacted, and further none of those medicines which which went through the clinical trial or approval from ethics committee also caused a lot of disaster. So they did not accept that it is causing disaster, but the good thing is they realized that it is causing more health hazard to people, and people are dying in large numbers. All those medicine, whether it is remdesivir or favipiravir or HCQ, all that has been withdrawn across the country. So that is my point of view I wanted to share with you.
Thank you, Pritam ji. Our next question is from Sanjay. Are there any studies available for the 5G impact on the biosphere? And points raised by Professor Girish, are there any white papers on this topic yet?
Yeah, many papers are there, including the report which were prepared by 250 global scientists across the globe, which were given to UN, European Union, WHO, and all of that. Girish Kumar and Dr. R.S. Sharma were part of interministerial committee, which was set up by Government of India, Department of Telecommunication. That report and the impact on environmental condition is also shared with the Government of India. They also did a clinical trial on rodents, around 3,000 rodents, wherein they could establish the severe acute respiratory issue on the rodents if they are exposed to the radiation. All that data is available, but this organization called ICNRP, which did nothing to do further safety trial, what they do is look at those 25,000 paper which got published in last 30 years. They look at what is missing element in those research paper, and they create another paper based on those paper, and they said, see, this is not conclusive. The data is not available for human being. So instead of accepting the truth, they said that the lab trial on the human needs to be done. The lab trial on the animals is not sufficient. So all that kind of things, what they have been doing to nullify the scientific evidence. And these people who are there, around 12 people in IC and IRP, they are not well qualified. Somebody is a radiologist with a very small qualification. Other people are more of almost retired, but they're still lingering around in this small NGO. And they only put in efforts to nullify the scientific evidence, which is supported by 25,000 plus papers. When you search for it, you search for the biological disaster on the human being with radiation, you'll find hundreds of papers. You can search on Google Scholar, you can search on Google, you can search on different medical journals, all that you'll be able to search very easily.
Thank you, Pritam ji. So finally, we've come to the end of today's session. A big thank you to the panelists, and a thank you to our audience as well for hanging in there. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at the same time on the same link for our day's 26th topic, Solutions for Global Ecological Disasters. Namaste and have a wonderful evening.
Do a closure with a mantra for world peace and harmony.
Of course.
Yes, please do.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhave. Shanti, 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 Hari Om. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, Pritam ji. That was a lovely way to end the thing.
For prayer to the divine forces to help whatever we are trying to manifest, that we have their assistance and in it too. Thank you.